Have you ever noticed how some men seem to captivate women effortlessly? Not just with looks or wealth, but with their words. Here's a question for you. Do you believe influence comes more from what you say or how you say it? Share your answer in the comments because the truth might challenge the way you've been thinking about conversations. Niccolò Machiavelli, often seen as one of history's most ruthless political thinkers, wasn't writing dating advice. But his insights into persuasion, control, and human nature can be applied to how we connect with people, especially women. He understood that words, when used wisely, can dominate not through force, but through subtle influence. In this video, we'll explore what Machiavelli's philosophy teaches about communication, how to project confidence, create intrigue, and speak in ways that leave a lasting mark on her mind. By the end, you'll see why mastering influence is less about manipulation and more about understanding the psychology behind human desire. And if this resonates with you, write seductive wisdom in the comments so I know you stayed with me until the end. Machiavelli believed that authority in speech wasn't about shouting louder or using complex words. It was about projecting certainty. When you talk with conviction, people naturally assume you know what you're talking about. This principle applies directly to how you communicate with women. If your voice hesitates, if your words are constantly filled with doubt, you communicate insecurity. But when your tone is steady and confident, it creates a magnetic pull. Psychologists call this the confidence effect. People are more likely to trust and follow someone who sounds sure of themselves, even if the content of their message isn't extraordinary. Think of two men giving the same compliment. One mutters it nervously. I guess you look nice today." The other looks her in the eye and says calmly, "You look great today." The difference isn't the words, it's the authority behind them. Machiavelli wrote that leaders must appear decisive, even when uncertain, because hesitation erodes influence. Applied to conversations with women, this means choosing your words and standing behind them. For example, if you suggest going somewhere together, don't frame it weakly. "Maybe we could if you want." Instead, state it clearly. "Let's go here. You'll enjoy it." That firmness creates a sense of direction, which women often interpret as strength. Body language plays a huge role too. Authority isn't just spoken, it's shown. Upright posture, relaxed shoulders, and measured gestures reinforce the confidence in your words. Machiavelli understood that appearances often matter more than reality. Even if you don't feel confident in the moment, acting as though you are can make others perceive you as such. Over time, this perception becomes reality. Another example, in group conversations, the man who speaks less but with more certainty often commands more attention than the one who talks endlessly. Authority is built not by volume, but by clarity and control. This is why Machiavelli advised leaders to speak only when necessary, but to speak with weight when they do. The danger is confusing authority with arrogance. True authority doesn't mean belittling others or forcing dominance. It means speaking with calm assurance, rooted in self-respect. Women are especially attuned to this difference. Arrogance pushes them away while authentic authority draws them in. So ask yourself, when you speak to women, do your words carry authority or do they reveal uncertainty? Share your reflections in the comments, because the way you speak can shape not just how she sees you, but how you see yourself. Machiavelli often stressed that power is not only in what you reveal, but in what you conceal. He believed that keeping people guessing gave a leader an advantage, because mystery makes others curious and even a little unsettled. Applied to conversations with women, this principle means you don't have to explain everything, share every detail, or constantly fill silence with words. Sometimes the less you say, the more powerful you appear. Psychologists describe this as the curiosity gap. When you hold back just enough information, the other person naturally leans in wanting to know more. For example, instead of bragging about every achievement, you casually mention one interesting experience and then move on. She'll often be the one asking follow-up questions because you left space for curiosity. That intrigue is far more engaging than dumping your entire life story in one conversation. Silence is another overlooked tool of influence. Most men panic at pauses and rush to fill them, but Machiavelli would argue that patience during silence communicates strength. When you can stay calm in a quiet moment, you show that you're not desperate for approval. This makes the other person value your words more when you do speak. Think about it. In a room, the person who speaks sparingly but with intent often controls the flow of the conversation. Consider an everyday example. Two men are on a date. One talks non-stop, explaining everything about himself, his job, his opinions. The other listens carefully, asks thoughtful questions, and allows silence without discomfort. By the end, she remembers the second man more vividly, not because he said more, but because he created space for her curiosity and emotions. Machiavelli observed that people often reveal too much, making themselves predictable and easy to control. Women, like anyone, are more intrigued by someone who cannot be easily read. A little restraint paired with confidence communicates that you have depth worth discovering. This doesn't mean playing manipulative games, it means living with balance. You share enough to build connection, but you protect your dignity by not oversharing. That subtle control is what keeps you memorable long after the conversation ends. So ask yourself, do you reveal too much too quickly, or do you create an air of mystery that leaves her wanting to know more? Share your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Machiavelli understood one of the most basic truths of human nature. People are drawn to what they do not fully understand. When you can spark curiosity, you create a powerful sense of intrigue that keeps someone's mind occupied with thoughts of you. In the context of talking to women, curiosity is not about confusing her or playing games. It's about leaving just enough unsaid that she wants to learn more. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the brain to remember incomplete stories or unresolved situations more than finished ones. For example, if you mention an unusual experience, "I once had a conversation that completely changed how I see life." But stop there. Her mind naturally fills with questions. She'll want to know what happened, why it mattered, and what it revealed about you. That gap is what keeps her engaged. Consider two men at dinner. One spends the entire time listing his accomplishments, trying to impress with complete stories. The other casually hints at experiences without giving everything away, then turns the focus back on her. By the end of the evening, she's still thinking about the second man because her mind hasn't finished the story. That curiosity becomes attraction. Machiavelli advised rulers to never be fully understood, because unpredictability creates respect and attention. In relationships, the same principle applies. Don't let her think she has you completely figured out after one or two conversations. Keep a sense of depth. Share new sides of yourself gradually, your passions, your perspectives, your humor, so that every interaction feels like discovering something new. Another way to spark curiosity is by asking her thoughtful, unexpected questions. Instead of the usual, "How was your day?" you might ask, "What's something you've always wanted to do but never told anyone?" Questions like this create emotional depth and push her to open up in ways most men never inspire. The man who stirs self-reflection becomes unforgettable. The danger, of course, is overdoing it. Too much mystery without substance can seem manipulative. Curiosity works best when paired with authenticity. You want her wondering about you because you genuinely have layers, not because you're pretending. The goal is intrigue, not deception. So here's the question. Do you make people more curious about you when you talk? Or do you leave conversations so predictable that nothing lingers in their mind? Share your answer in the comments. You might find that the way you tell your story determines how unforgettable you become. Machiavelli taught that the one who controls his emotions controls the situation. He argued that showing too much anger, fear, or desperation makes you predictable and easy to manipulate. In conversations with women, the same rule applies. When you keep your emotions steady, you project strength and self-mastery. A man who can stay calm under pressure, who doesn't get rattled easily, becomes far more attractive than the one who lets every mood dictate his behavior. Modern psychology backs this up. Emotional regulation, the ability to stay composed regardless of circumstances, is one of the strongest indicators of leadership and confidence. For example, imagine two men facing rejection. One reacts with visible frustration, arguing or sulking. The other simply smiles, accepts it gracefully, and moves on. Which one seems stronger? The second man, because his response shows that his self-worth isn't dictated by external validation. This doesn't mean you become emotionless or cold. On the contrary, it's about balance. You can laugh, enjoy, and even show care, but you don't allow your emotions to spiral into extremes. Machiavelli would say a ruler should appear compassionate when it benefits him, but never lose control in private. In personal relationships, this translates into being emotionally generous without being emotionally reckless. Consider a real-life scenario. A woman tests a man's patience by teasing him or challenging his opinion. The insecure man reacts defensively, raising his voice or trying to win the argument. The confident man stays composed, perhaps even smiles, and responds with calm logic or playful humor. The difference is striking. Emotional control turns potential conflict into connection. Another layer is how you handle uncertainty. Many men try to force clarity, demanding constant reassurance. But a man who can tolerate uncertainty without panic shows resilience. Women notice this. Emotional steadiness signals that you can face challenges in life, not just in relationships, which makes you far more dependable in her eyes. Even in silence, emotional control is powerful. If a pause happens in conversation and you don't rush to fill it nervously, you show composure. That calmness makes your presence feel stronger. Machiavelli understood that restraint, knowing when not to act, is often more powerful than constant reaction. So here's the reflection. Do you control your emotions, or do your emotions control you? Share your honest thoughts in the comments, because true strength isn't measured by words or wealth, but by the discipline of the heart. Machiavelli believed that influence wasn't about forcing people to think like you. It was about planting ideas in such a way that they believed the thoughts were their own. When applied to talking with women, this means framing conversations in a way that leaves impressions that linger long after the words are spoken. The goal isn't manipulation, but subtle influence, guiding her mind to keep returning to you. Psychologists call this priming. It's the effect of introducing a thought or image that unconsciously shapes how someone interprets future experiences. For example, if you casually mention that you enjoy exploring hidden spots in the city, she might later notice a cafe or park and think of you. The association lingers not because you demanded attention, but because you placed the idea gently in her mind. Another powerful method is storytelling. People remember stories far more vividly than plain statements. Instead of saying, "I'm adventurous," you tell a short, vivid story about a time you got lost while traveling and ended up having the best experience of your life. That image becomes anchored in her memory. Machiavelli wrote that leaders should shape perceptions, not just argue facts. And stories do exactly that. The way you phrase questions also plants ideas. If you ask, "Wouldn't it be exciting to try something new together?" You've already suggested an experience while giving her the freedom to respond. Even if she doesn't answer immediately, the seed is planted. Later, when she thinks of doing something new, she connects that idea with you. Consider a practical example. A man and a woman are discussing travel. One man lists all the places he's been, trying to impress. The other paints a picture. There's something about watching the sunrise in a new city. It feels like the world resets. Days later, she remembers his words, not the list of destinations. The image he created sticks because it engaged her imagination. This doesn't mean planting ideas through flattery or manipulation. The key is authenticity, sharing parts of yourself that naturally invite her curiosity and emotions. When you talk in ways that spark her imagination, you don't just pass the time, you dominate her thoughts even when you're not around. So ask yourself, do your words vanish the moment the conversation ends, or do they echo in her mind hours later? Share your thoughts in the comments, because knowing how to plant ideas is the difference between being forgettable and unforgettable. Machiavelli argued that power is never secure unless it is maintained over time. The same idea applies in relationships. Capturing attention once is easy, but turning that influence into lasting desire requires consistency and depth. A fleeting spark may get her interest, but only a man who combines authority, mystery, curiosity, and emotional control can stay in her mind for the long term. Psychologists explain that desire grows when two needs are balanced: excitement and security. Too much excitement without stability creates chaos. Too much stability without excitement creates boredom. Machiavelli would say a wise man learns to master both. For example, you can be consistent in your presence while still surprising her with new perspectives or experiences. This mix keeps the connection alive. Think of it like fire. A sudden flame burns bright but dies quickly, while a carefully tended fire provides warmth that lasts. Your influence works the same way. The first impression may spark her interest, but lasting desire comes from nurturing that energy with authenticity, patience, and depth. She must feel that being with you is both safe and unpredictable in the right ways. Another important piece is respect. Machiavelli knew fear could hold people temporarily, but respect keeps loyalty. With women, trying to dominate through force or manipulation only backfires. True influence comes from being a man she respects, because respect sustains attraction long after initial emotions fade. Without it, desire weakens. Consider a practical example. Two men capture a woman's attention on the first date. One relies only on charm, but later shows inconsistency and immaturity. The other remains steady, continues to engage her mind, and balances care with intrigue. Guess who she still thinks about months later? Lasting desire isn't about the loudest impression. It's about the most consistent one. Even Machiavelli emphasized adaptability. Human nature is unpredictable, and so is attraction. What keeps influence alive is the ability to adjust, to stay firm in your values but flexible in your approach. A man who evolves while staying grounded ensures that his presence never grows stale. So here's the reflection. Are you only good at sparking short-term interest, or do you have the discipline to turn that influence into lasting desire? Share your thoughts in the comments, because true mastery isn't winning attention once, it's holding it over time. Machiavelli may have written for rulers and politicians, but his lessons on influence apply to everyday life, even in how we speak to women. Authority in your words, mystery in your presence, curiosity in your stories, and control over your emotions all combine to create an impact. that goes far deeper than charm or looks. Real influence isn't about manipulation. It's about discipline, awareness, and the ability to guide conversations with strength. Attraction fades quickly if it's built only on appearances. But when you master these principles, you don't just spark interest, you leave a lasting imprint on her mind. Influence turns into respect, and respect turns into desire that endures. That's the kind of mastery Machiavelli would call true power. If this video gave you something to think about, let me know in the comments. And to show me you stayed until the end, write seductive wisdom below. Your reflection might just be the spark that inspires someone else to rethink how they communicate.